Alright, this is Stephen Paul making another video for OneOnes.com. Today I'm going to continue testing my Heuristics series, this time looking at flop check raise in a single raise pot. So if you haven't seen one of these videos before, the general idea is that I'm going to take a spot, and we all have kind of rules of thumb or heuristics that we use in game when deciding what to do with a hand. You know, you're not running some kind of sim in your head. You just have this rule that you use of these are the hands that I 3-bet, these are the hands that I defend. And so what I'm trying to do here is to take those heuristics that I know I'm using in game and put them into words and write them down. I think that does two things for you. One, it forces you to actually do that exercise, whereas, you know, sometimes you'll find a spot where you think you know what you're doing, but when asked to actually put it into words, you realize you don't have any idea what you're doing. And then secondly, I think when you actually make it official and write it down, it helps you to improve them as well and see things that, you know, you had been kind of automatically using, but maybe when you see it and you say it out loud, you realize it's not great. So anyways, these are the heuristics that I use. I wrote this in a couple of minutes, just before I started this video. And the idea is that I will go through these, then we'll do a bunch of training, and hopefully through that training, find some situations where these heuristics are not very good, or can be improved. Or often what I find in here is, you know, I tried to write down the things that I'm thinking about in game, but often what I find is when you actually start playing hands, you realize that there are others as well. And so I will add to this and change this and kind of try to find the flaws in my game. So let's start from the start. So for 3-bets, honestly, I don't think I use any 3-bets. Every once in a while, if I think a guy is getting way out of line, then I will 3-bet very often. Or if I'm playing against someone who I think is a nit who just always has it, then I will 3-bet my value hands. But I think most of the times I'm 3-betting, I am super unbalanced. And in general, I do very little 3-betting. We will see if Solver likes that. I think it is a spot I have looked at in the past. It's probably been too long. But I don't think in position does a ton of 3-bets in general. And typically, you know, that's going to happen where position is somewhat valuable. Out of position is going to play a relatively polarized range. And so we don't have a lot of hands that have incentive to 3-bet basically. So if you're not playing 3-bets, then really all you need to know is what is the threshold hand. And so the biggest problem is that this is going to be very board and size dependent, right? You can't just be like, oh, I always defend all pairs, all draws, you know, and all 2 overs or something. That's going to work pretty well on some boards, and that's going to work very poorly on other boards, and especially if you face some bigger sizes. I would say that it is quite rare to fold a pair or a gut shot, except on the wettest boards. Again, we're talking button versus big blind, where we bet 33 on the flop and face a half pot check raise. So this is a little over 3.5, but very, very close to 3.5x, which I think is a decent estimate for what kind of sizings you'll face. I know there are some boards where people use bigger sizes, and I do talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, in general, pairs and gut shots are going to continue on most boards except the very worst ones, the very wettest ones. Versus big check raise, though, you do have to be careful. So there are boards like, something like ace 8-6, especially if you're early position versus big blind, where if they check and you bet, ace queen, ace king or whatever, and get check raised the 6x size, the pot size, even those hands can be indifferent. And it's much more about having some equity versus the value part of their range. And I think what's important to think about here is, what is the value range that you're facing? Because it's not so much about the pure strength of your hand, but about the equity of your hand versus their value range. And especially, do you have a chance to outdraw that hand? So on a board like ace 8-6, two-tone, a hand like ace queen is going to have pretty close to 0% equity, versus the value portion of the check raise range. And so a hand like, tens with a spade or something, which is a, significantly worse hand from a value, point of view, actually has 2 outs and has a backdoor flush draw and has a backdoor straight draw. And so a hand like that is going to be preferred. So you do need to keep in mind a little bit about the sizing you're facing. Whereas in this spot, button versus big blind, where we face 3.5x, a hand like ace queen is going to dominate some value hands, on ace 8-6. And so it's definitely never going to fold. So if we go back to facing the small size, in general, I think most of the time we're going to see overs and backdoors pure continue. This will not be perfect. There will be some boards where some of them fold, but if you're looking at a relatively dry board, then definitely the overs with backdoors will continue. And then as the board gets drier, you'll start to have to mix in more of the, strong 2 overs, ace king highs, 1 over with a backdoor flush draw. So something like, I don't know, queen 9 suited on 10-6-3 rainbow or something. is likely to have to continue. And then, hands that are like 3 straight and 3 flush will often continue as well. So a hand like Jack 10 of spades on ace 9 to rainbow. So these are the heuristics that I came up with, and I think do an okay job of approximating my strategy. And now we will test that and find out where that's lacking. And so I guess I probably should have mentioned this at the start, but the way I think about this is, if I wanted to take someone who, knows enough about poker, but is not a great player, and I wanted to get them to play pretty close to my strategy with just a few sentences, this is what I would tell them. So, when you face the check raise, almost never fold a pair or a gut shot. And then, depending on the board, you're going to have to do this. A pure beginner is not going to be able to use this. But, someone who has some experience with how the game works will be able to roughly execute my strategy from that. And we'll do a mix of just skipping through and looking deeper into sim. So like this will be an obvious pure call. Okay, so it looks like already we're seeing a few check raises. I would never have considered check raising this hand. So let's just take a look and see if check raises are happening often here. I wouldn't think they are. 7%, which isn't nothing. It looks like it's built around the sets, basically. I'm not going to worry too much about the raising. I'm going to focus on the calling threshold, but it is something that's worth seeing. Okay, so here's an example of a board where usually pairs are going to continue pretty often. This one I think is a pretty clear exception. Yeah, I would just fold pocket fives here. Pretty clear. Okay, now we have definitely a cuspier hand. So a somewhat connected board, and it has a flush draw. We have queen jack, so we've got the 3 straight, the best 3 straight, 2 overs, and a pretty weak backdoor flush draw, but it is something. I would imagine this is a hand that is kind of on the border, and on 18 I'm going to continue. Yeah, so it looks like basically a pure continue, but for nothing, and it does make some folds. So let's take a look. I would imagine this hand is somewhat significantly better than a hand like King Jack. So I think I would rather Queen Jack than King Jack. And definitely better than a hand like King Queen, I would think. Does it keep wanting to show me reports? So Queen of Spades Jack continues. King of Spades Jack. Okay, so it looks like I've got that wrong. The King Jack is better. The King Queen is better too. Let's take a very quick look at the check raise range. I guess there are more Queen Jacks check raising, so I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it. Beyond that, I don't see a big reason. Yeah, not sure exactly. But it does look like if we go back and let's look at specifically the hands with 1 spade in them, it looks like they are mostly continuing. It looks like basically all of the 2 overs with a backdoor are continuing, which I think most people will find these, but you might find a few folds here. I think the ones where you're likely to see people who call too much are going to be these exact hands, these ace of spades 9. So there are definitely some boards where a hand like this will pure continue, but here we just have enough. We have enough of the other strong hands that we don't need to go this far, and their equity will not be as good as in some other situations. All right, we will keep going. Easy fold. So here, I do think we probably are folding some gut shots, but I don't think we're going to fold with the backdoor flush draw as well. But if I had ace 4 of clubs, I would fold. Let's see if that is correct. I'm not sure why it always wants to show me reports. Yes, okay, so ace 4 clubs is mixing, but there is again, we had the rough heuristic that it's very rare to fold a gut shot, but we have found that, it's definitely not never fold a gut shot. Here, I think this one is too weak, with just the 1 backdoor straight draw, needing specifically 8-7, and then we'll also be dominated by some check raise bluffs. So I think this one is just not strong enough, and that's probably what I was missing in that other one as well. In the Queen Jack spot, is just that it is nice to have King Jack or King Queen when they check raise Queen Jack, and we can both turn top pair, and we have a stronger one. So as we get into the higher cards, so like Queen Jack now does some defending, King Jack mostly defending, King Queen basically pure defending. So that kind of thing does matter quite a bit, because we will see some check raises from some random 2 overs that have a spade. So like, yeah, all of these hands are raising reasonably often, and you don't really want to have Jack 9 when a 9 turns and you are dominated by a bunch of the bluffs. Easy fold. So on this board, I would not fold pairs. I think this one is dry enough that we're just going to need to defend all pairs. And then I think the hands that will be interesting are hands like... So a hand like 10-9 of hearts, I think, is just a very quite clear defend. By the time you get to like Queen 9 of hearts, that I'm much less confident in. Queen 10 of hearts, I would continue. I think I would fold Queen 9 of hearts, but we will see in a second. What's another hand I think will be interesting? So I think like, all the Ace 10 of hearts kind of hands, I think those will continue. So maybe a hand like Ace Jack off or something is probably going to be indifferent as well. So this one, right, yeah, the 4x is, if you think of 3-bets, probably pocket fours is the first thing to 3-bet. So you will see some 3-bets with 4x. But again, I'm not too worried about that. Let's take a look at the pairs. Okay, so a little bit of folds from the very worst under pairs. Again, that makes sense. If you think about the value range, a big chunk of the value range is going to be pocket fours and pocket eights. And so, that's a very bad situation if you turn a set when they have those. Whereas, for the higher pairs, they do not suffer from that. So yeah, 10-9, basically all the 10-9s are continuing, the suited ones, even a little bit of 10-9 offsuit. And then yes, so the Ace Jack and Ace Queen are going to mix. All of these suited ones. Okay, Queen 9 suited, so I'm missing a few defends there. You do want 2 overs to the second pair. So I think I would have gotten all of these that have the more obvious straight draws, but this one without the obvious straight draws, I think I probably would have folded. One thing that I do think is worth noting here is when we look at the big blind check raise range, we're going to see some of these hands that have, the 2 overs to second pair and a backdoor flush draw, and the backdoor straight draw ones as well. And so when we think about what his check raising range, the weaker part of his check raising range is, it's going to have a lot of 2 diamond hands, 2 heart hands, and 2 spade hands. So when you look at the types of ace queens and ace jacks you're going to defend, it is primarily those with a club, right? So we do not want to block his weakest check raises. I imagine we see, some ace 2 suited and ace 3 suited as well, and 6, 7, 8. So only those with the backdoor flush draw. And so when you're thinking of the weakest defense you're going to have, you would rather have a club in these offsuit hands so that we don't block those bluffs. When you go to a hand like Queen 10, now we don't want clubs because the hearts, spades, and diamonds all have a backdoor flush draw. But when we don't, you're not going to get anything particularly useful out of having a heart. You would rather unblock the bluff range. I think on this board, you just want to pure defend your pocket pairs. The 2 setouts are extremely valuable because villain will have a bunch of Jack X in his range. A 2 is about as blank as he can get, and our hand will be worth a lot on there. So I would pure call all the pairs. Looks like not a very high EV call, but the pairs are pure continuing. Yes. And then the gut shots as well. But even here, you can see that the 10-9 of clubs starts to fold a little bit. So even here, the non-nut gut shot needs to be a little bit careful. And this is, a fairly dry board. Easy fold. Easy call. Would never do anything else. I wonder if this is the kind of hand that solver sometimes 3-bets, but to me, I would just pure call this hand. Yeah, okay, pure call. Try to get some more cuspy hands before we spend too much time talking about them. Okay, this one is at least a little bit interesting. We have the 2 overs, we have the backdoor flush draw, and we have a, not particularly good backdoor straight draw, although I guess on king queen specifically, it becomes pretty good. I think this hand is just a fold. I will be curious to see if we lower this to a deuce. If we start to defend this hand, I would pure fold on this particular board. I think it becomes more interesting with the ace of spades, and there I could see continuing, although I still think it's probably going to be mixed. We just have so many hands that are better than this, and all, it's pretty hard not to have a pair or a gut shot on this board. We don't have a ton of hands like that. So I think this one's just going to be a pure fold. Okay, already a little defend, so probably based on that I'm wrong about the ace of spades, but let's see. And then I'm curious also to see if we lower this. So no, the ace of spades is still mostly folding as well. And then let's lower this to a deuce. And now I would imagine our hand is much more likely to defend. I guess we must be using a bigger size. Yes. But when we do use this size, ace, jack with the jack of spades, is now basically pure calling. And same thing with the ace of spades. So yes, the connectivity of the board, not surprisingly, matters. Easy fold. We'll look at this one quickly because I think again, the hand that people are somewhat likely to get wrong is and maybe I'm likely to get wrong, we'll see in a second, but I would fold hands like ace of spades 9. If villain starts going very small, then I think you have to defend, and it may be that it mixes some defense. But yeah, basically pure fold. And I think that's one that's easy to continue. I think sometimes what people get wrong is they think about the big blind defense. And I mean, even here, people are probably over defending because you see a couple of ace of spades folding, but basically none. But I think, they're used to always continuing with the backdoor nut flush draw, and, maybe have the heuristics a little bit mixed in their head. But yes, I would not be at all surprised to see someone bet call a hand like ace of spades 9 or any of these ace of spades X. Easy call. Yeah, so this falls into the, 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. This one has a backdoor straight draw as well. I would not consider folding. Let's try to think of a few cuspier hands. So again, like all of the queen of spades jack, I think on this board are probably just all of the 2 overs with a spade are continuing. Hands that probably, or that I would think of as kind of cuspy are, I think a hand like queen 8 of hearts, I think I would probably fold, but I wouldn't be shocked if that was an overfold. 2's no spade is probably not a great defend, but might have to get in there sometimes. I think, and again, I think it's the thing some people will over defend here is hands like ace queen. I think those need a spade. Maybe they do a tiny bit without a spade, but I think they, in general, need a spade to continue. And yeah. Okay, so queen jack of hearts is good. Queen 8 of hearts, I said I would fold. Queen 8 of hearts does look like a pure fold. Good. Ace queen with no spade, I said I would fold. That looks good. Probably overdoing it. So I'm overdoing it a bit with the 2 overs and a spade. It looks like when you have the low spade, those are mixing. But again, and then again, we see this thing where you need to be careful with the just 1 over ace of spades. Part of that is also that often those hands will be check raise bluffs. So when you think of the worst, some of the worst check raises that villain will have, they will be those precise hands. Ace of spades 8, ace of spades 7. So the ace of spades has some value, but it also has some negatives as well, and that you're blocking some of the worst, lowest equity bluffs. Very clear continue. If I were going to construct a 3-bet range, I don't hate this one. But yeah, I would just pure call. Yeah, it looks like it's a fine 3-bet. I would imagine this is quite a bit more than our range is 3-betting, but it's, this hand has some nice properties, blocking some of the stronger hands in villain's range and having a bunch of backup equity. So yeah, you can see our range is only 3-betting 5% of the time, but that 9-7 of hearts quite likes it. Very clear call. This is the kind of board I don't think you're folding any gut shots. So I think even 6-4 of clubs, I would, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if solver has 6-4 of clubs, but maybe it has a little bit of it. Depends on yeah, okay. 6-4 clubs, pure continues, yes. So on this board, you're never going to fold gut shots. We've already seen several other examples where we do fold a lot of gut shots. But again, I think a hand that is somewhat easy to overvalue is ace king is still mostly defending, but like ace jack is a pretty clear fold. This board has tons of gut shots again, right? If you have any semi-connected hand, that will have a gut shot. Very clear continue here. This one's the double gutter and it's got the nut end. I would fold. So let's come up with some hands that I think should fold. So ace 8 of clubs, I think is a good example. I think it'd be easy to defend that. I've got an over and a gut shot, but I think your gut shot is not very good. You will lose to king queen sometimes, and it's going to be a 4-straight board. So that's not particularly valuable. I don't think the ace is great either. So ace 8 of clubs, I would fold here. Oops, I just clicked fold. I did not mean to fold this hand. This one is a very clear continue. And all the king 10s. You don't, obviously with the double gutter, you don't need to consider folding. But let's check my ace 8 of clubs. Ace 8 of clubs, pure fold. Ace 8 of diamonds, pure fold. I'm wondering if there are any, I guess 8-5 is a double gutter. I was hoping to have a hand like 8-4 of hearts, where you have, where you have the backdoor flush draw, but nothing else going for you. But we don't really have a hand like that. So this one I think is a pretty clear continue. I would fold ace 4 of clubs, but I think here with the backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, and over, and a fairly dry board, I think this one will be pretty clear. Yes. Ace 4 of clubs, I do think will fold though. Yes, and it is pure. And so yeah, here's the kind of board I was talking about, where you have the super dry board, and now what did I write? Many strong 2-overs, and over and a backdoor flush draws, 3 straight, 3 flush continue. So let's take a look. So many of the strong 2-overs, so, ace king and ace queen and ace jack are all mixed. Again, we see that same effect, which is nice to see again, that the clubs are a little more likely to continue than the other suits. And it seems to specifically matter for the lower card. There are probably fewer ace-x suited bluff raises. Yeah, but still a decent number. And then what else had I written? Like the 1-over and backdoors. So like queen 8 suited, pure continuing. Queen 7 starting to mix. Oops, sorry, those are the check raises. Yeah, queen 8 pure continuing, same idea. Queen 7 starting to mix. Even going as low, so I probably wouldn't have found these. These are getting a little weaker than I would have thought we would go. But yes, that kind of 1-over and backdoors. And what were the other things that I had written? 3 straight and 3 flush. So a hand. It's actually pretty hard to have that here. But like, I guess Jack 9 suited, but that has an over as well. So that one's pure continuing. Very clear call. I think on this dry of a board, I think all the ace jacks, will continue. Let's take a look before we see it though. Let's think about some hands that might be close. So you do need to be, again, I think this is about, you need to be careful with the quality of your overcards. So if you have the backdoor, so like Jack 9 of spades, I'm probably still continuing. But, a hand like ace jack or king queen is going to be more likely to continue than Jack 9 of clubs. I do think the 2-overs with the suits are going to very high frequency continue though, if not pure. So let's look at diamonds. And yeah, they just all continue. But the 2-overs part is important because villain has a bunch of 6x in their range. So you can see with just the 1-over mostly folding, although it looks like the king x are mostly continuing. And then, yeah, all the ace jacks are continuing. Ace 10s are continuing. And yes, again, we see that effect. The quality of your high cards is very important. Presumably for that kind of domination effect, where king queen is mostly continuing, king jack, queen jack are kind of on the cusp, and all the others are basically folding. And yeah, if we take a look at villain's check raise range, we see a ton of 6x in it. So that is why, there's the importance of the overcards, is you want to be able to outdraw these hands. And then, yeah, we see a lot of check raising from these kind of middling hands that have some backdoor equity, have a backdoor straight draw, have a backdoor flush draw. And so again, when we're continuing, we want to continue with hands that are going to dominate these. All right. So as I said, it's going to be pretty rare to fold a pair. We probably have, that's something I forgot to check on some of these boards, but like, maybe we'll go back and check in a minute. There are going to be boards where we fold pairs. Here, I would probably fold a hand like pocket 2s, no spade, if I bet it, which I don't think you should bet it very often. Do you ever fold a 3? I'm going to say no, but I would not be shocked to be wrong. And definitely if you made this into a 5, then I would think folding some 5x will be good. Yeah, so this is pretty clear, but let's check the 5. Once we take a look at this, yeah, so 2s, even 2s with a spade, so I would have called too much there for sure. But 2s without a spade, I think I would have found that fold. And no 3 is ever folding. Obviously, no stronger pair is ever folding. Let's change this to the 5 of hearts and take a look at some 5x hands. So we now see Ace-5 doing a decent amount of folding. The weaker ones, so I guess, that is one thing to keep in mind, is that the 5x just isn't going to bet very much on this flop. But when it does, if it doesn't have a back, or if it doesn't have a draw, it is doing some folding. We'll play a few more of these, and then maybe I will do the same exercise, but from early position, and we'll see if we can find some differences. Ace-King with a spade. So most of the time, I think these 2 overs with backdoors are going to continue. This is a fairly connected board, and one where we will have a decent amount of strong hands. I still think at worst it will mix continues, and it might pure continue. So I will call. Yeah, okay, it does pure continue. Ace-King, I think no spade will be a very clear fold. And I think the underpairs as well. Yes, so pocket 2s, pocket 3s are folding even with a spade. They don't bet very often, but when they do bet, they are predominantly folding to a raise. Okay, we played 24. Let's play one more, and then we'll mix in some early position hands as well. That's an easy one to end on. All right, so I will pause here and reset it up for us opening under the gun. Okay, so now we've opened under the gun. You'll notice the sizings are different. That's because I'm using the general sims, so I'll just show you quickly what those look like. So it's a min raise under the gun, so it might be a touch wider. It's really not a whole lot different from the 2.5x opening range, but the big difference is the big blind defense range. So there are many more weak suited hands and many more weak offsuit hands than when we raise 2.5x. So just something to be aware of for those of you who don't use that size. So versus 3.5x, just a very easy call. I would not do any check raising here, or sorry, 3-betting here, but it looks like solver does. This just feels like a spot where I just have so few hands that are interested in 3-betting that I don't bother designing a range. Whereas solver is like, well, I don't care about that. I've got a combo that wants to do some 3-betting, so I'm going to build a range around it. But yeah, I think for us humans, just playing call fold there, it's going to be totally fine. Poker's pretty easy when you have a set every hand. It seems like a fine hand to 3-bet, but again, I'm just going to play calls. I literally have a set every hand. This is okay. It's not a set, but it's not worth discussing either. Okay, finally we have something. Okay, so here I think with fairly dry board, I do think our standards need to be, not surprisingly, a bit higher. Our range is just stronger in general, and especially there are many fewer offsuit hands than when we open on the button. So the biggest difference, if we let's very quickly take a look at the 2 ranges. The biggest thing that will jump out is the lack of the ace-x offsuit. So we're already folding even some ace-10 off and all of the weaker ones, all of the king-10 off, queen-10 off, jack-10 off. So we just have many, many, many fewer low cards and many, many, many fewer offsuit hands. So let's fold and look at the button, and you can see a ton more offsuit combos and many more of the kind of weak 1 high card suited hands. So because of that, we will have fewer offsuit overs and many more hands that have some backdoors, as well as just a higher concentration of the strong hands in our range. So I think this hand is just a pretty straightforward fold, and I wouldn't worry too much about, but we have a club part of it. I think it's just, going to fold. Hands like ace-jack suited, ace-jack of spades, I think are still pretty clear continues. Yes. And, okay, so you do mix in a little bit of ace-king of clubs, ace-king with a club, and it is good to know that same idea holds of valuing the club, just you need to be a little bit more selective with a stronger range. And again, I think the idea behind the club will be exactly the same, but let's confirm that that's true, and that yes, that the, kind of weakest hands are going to be these 1 over and a backdoor type hands. Okay, so I think here pocket 6s will pure continue. Obviously, you'd rather have a spade, but I still think this hand will continue. You do need to be a little careful in spots like this where villain will have some check raises that, you can turn a strong hand, but have it be the second best hand. So on a 6, villain will check raise some 7-5 here and will check raise some 5-2 suited, which they have because we min raised. Again, that's one of those things that you do need to keep in mind how your raise size affects ranges. So when we min raise under the gun, big blind will pure continue 5-2 suited, whereas when we 2.5x under the gun, I think it still calls a little bit, but it's nowhere near nowhere near pure. And obviously 7-5 suited will be pure in there as well. I still think this hand is going to continue. If you had a hand like pocket twos, no spade, I think that one will just fold. But yes, looks, not super clear, 0.15 EV, but, pretty far from nothing. Yeah, so twos doesn't bet much. I mean, we just don't have it much when we raise under the gun, but when we do, we will fold those hands. Here, without a spade, I think this hand just wants to fold. With a spade, I would continue. On a 7, I mean, maybe it has to continue sometimes, but I would just fold without a spade. Let's think of some hands that might be close. So I think a hand like Queen 10 of Hearts will just pure continue. I think Ace 10 of Hearts will pure continue. I would imagine a hand like, by the time we get to Ace 8 of Hearts or something like that has no backdoor whatsoever, I could see that hand folding. I think the hands like King Queen with a spade are probably doing a lot of continuing. This I have definitely spent less time as the early position in this spot. So let's see if I'm going too far. So yeah, mix, whereas these would be like slam dunk continues versus button. Or sorry, when we are button. And then yes, I should have come up with these two, the underpairs without a spade. And yeah, Ace 8 of Hearts, these are just folding, but Ace 10 of Hearts. Oh, even Ace 10 of Hearts is folding. Okay, so I'm definitely going a little too far. With my defense. One thing to keep in mind, I would imagine now Ace 10 of Hearts is pure continuing. Yeah, so you do need to be, when it's a rainbow board, you will have fewer draws to continue. And yeah, these hands will also have a little better equity. Ace 10 of Hearts will do better on Jack 4-2 rainbow than it will on Jack 4-2, 2 spades. Very easy call. Yeah, I think just pretty clear call. Pretty clear call. Let's take a quick look. So here we have a spade. So we're going to continue versus any size. I'm a little curious. So I have looked. I know on ace high boards you have to start folding some reasonable amount of ace X. This call just will not go away. But yeah, here as well. You can see versus the pot size raise. Even the Jack X that doesn't have backup is going to be indifferent. And you really do start to focus on having outs versus the check raise range. So a hand like 10 of spades 10 is pure continuing. Mostly the pocket pairs with a spade are going to continue, whereas we fold some quite significantly stronger, absolute value hands, like Queen Jack. Easy fold. I think the more interesting case here is if we have diamonds. So that would be a very easy call versus when we are button. I would still probably call it here, but maybe we'll find out that I am not adjusting enough. But I would continue those. Ace 4 diamonds, Ace 4 hearts, Ace 4 of. Okay, so it starts to mix a little bit, but yeah, it is close. It is, continuing a decent amount, but not pure. Easy call, but again, this is the kind of hand that if you face the pot size raise, you should not be excited. Probably it still has to do quite a bit of continuing. And maybe it still pure continues, but it's not, when you face the small check raise, you're still like, okay, I can maybe beat King Queen every once in a while. But when you face the very large one, yeah, I mean, here King Queen is indifferent and, doing quite a bit of folding, and Ace King pure continues, but is worth, very little, without a spade, less than a big blind. And I would imagine that is specifically because, yes, that is specifically because villain is check raising some Ace King, which, some villains will not have that pre-flop to begin with, and then they may not bomb check raise the flop. There's also some kind of weirdly, mergy check raises going on with King Jack of clubs that are, these are not particularly human plays where you get folds from a couple of better hands and you get calls from a bunch of draws and some weaker hands. So something to be aware of that, when facing the big check raise size, hand values shift quite a bit. Here you definitely need a suit to continue. I think this hand just pure fold. Again, same idea. Ace Jack of Hearts I would continue, but I think without a suit is just going to fold. Let's make sure that's right. I would fold all the Ace Queen and Ace King as well. Maybe that is a tiny bit much. No, good. But yeah, with the backdoors, continue. This is another little thing you see sometimes, is that the suited ones call more often. I guess Ace Jack of Clubs has the double not blocking bluffs thing going on, which again, you can see that the only Ace Queen, Ace Jack that want to continue have a club in them. But even those are folding. Jack 9 5 with pocket eights. I would imagine this hand is worth 0. The turn set obviously is good, but it's slightly concerning that villain has all of the draws that will beat it, like mini straight draws complete when we turn an 8. And so, both we will get coolered sometimes, but also our set will have less equity than it would otherwise, because there will be many possible 4 straight rivers. So I'm going to say that this one is indifferent, and I'm going to fold on 95. Good. So this is a hand I would consider defending big blind versus button, but I think it's just going to be a fold here. Good, and let's check the big blind spot. Raise, call, queen 5-5. Queen 5-5, and we had 10-9 of hearts. So yes, consider defending. Mixes defends, but it's pure fold versus when we are under the gun. Don't think you should ever really 3-bet this, and yeah, easy call. See if we can find one more interesting one. Yeah, okay, this is a decent one. So again, we've got that underpair situation where when we hit a set, it's not ideal. Many draws complete. So I think I would rather have pocket 4s or 3s here. Those are lower frequency and range as well, but slightly drier board than the previous one. We rolled an 80. All right, I'm gonna go with the same. Say it's mixed. I don't know. For some reason, this one feels like it might be a pure defend, but I have no reasoning really to support that. Yeah, okay, interesting. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to say why I thought this one would pure defend. I guess it is a slightly lower board, but I mean it's not hugely different. But I guess these are fairly small effects. It's a very low EV call. Let's take a quick look. So it looks like they're not so worried about it here with the pocket 6s versus, 5s make sense because 8-6 suited is there. 4s is defending more often, but again, it's in range a little bit less, so I wouldn't read too much into that. Looks like all of the pairs are just sometimes continue, or, very occasionally folding, but mostly continuing. We see the same kind of effects that we've seen so far, where the 2 overs with backdoors are continuing and the 2 overs without are mostly folding. We see that same effect again of clubs, where the clubs are more likely to continue because they unblock bluffs, and the offsuit ones are basically just pure folding, but when they continue, they have a club in them. So I think I will call it there. Let's very quickly kind of go through and see how we feel about these heuristics. So as for the 3-bets, I started to feel a little bit different, that maybe I do want to start looking into 3-betting in this spot. It was never hugely frequent, but there was a lot of this, a lot of 8%, 7%, which is not nothing. And I do think, especially some villains have taken the whole flop check raise thing too far. We had a period where range c-betting was just totally standard. Everyone was doing it. And there are probably still too many people doing that. And so then you get the people who are counteracting that and who are check raising versus small, too much. And kind of the first thing you want to do to punish those people is to have a 3-betting range. And so, yeah, this might be something I look into. I don't think it's a disaster in theory to not play many 3-bets. But it's coming up often enough. And I suspect they're not super difficult to implement. I mean, these jacks, queens, kings, maybe. But I think often what you'll see is they're built around the sets. They have some blocker hands. They have some of the kind of same types of hands that you would use as check raises to begin with. So I don't think the structure is too difficult. Okay, so the call threshold, very board size dependent. I mean, yes, that's Not surprising. So this one held up well. Rare to fold a pair gut shot, except on the wettest boards. So we did see some of these. The pair, I would say, was especially rare. Gut shot, much more common, especially if it was a bad gut shot. But quite rare to fold pairs or gut shots. And then, important to keep in mind that the size matters a lot. So versus a big check raise, hands like top pair, top kicker can be indifferent. We saw lots of spots the few spots we checked, plenty of top pair hands were folding. So just something to be aware of, that having that backup equity is important facing the big size. Overs and backdoors pure continue on most boards. I think that held up pretty well. Again, kind of similar to the pairs gut shots, where there were definitely some boards where you start to fold some of those. But these are mostly pure continuing. And, I think the spots where they weren't are kind of not surprising. And then on the dry boards, you got to start defending mini strong 2 overs. We saw a couple of good examples of that. Which I'm struggling to find now, but like this 9-4-3, where I believe all the ace jacks were continuing. So, you're going to see a lot more of the strong 2 overs, the kind of 1 over plus backdoor, which we saw there as well. And the 3 straight and 3 flushes. These I think continue quite a bit in general. We saw the one where we were the early position. We had the 10-9 of hearts, which was pure fold when we're early position, but this is the kind of hand that starts to defend. If you make this rainbow, I'm sure you'll see more of those types of hands, and also if you make it a lower board. So I think overall these held up okay. I think we did reasonably well with the training, except when we had the misclick with the double gutter. So, avoid those. But yeah, let me know what you think of the video. I find this series quite useful for me. And I think in general the feedback's been good, but always good to hear from more people. And if there's any other kind of video you'd like to see from me, please let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you guys there. This has been Steve Paul for OneOnce.com. Thanks for watching.